What's up, YouTube? Stano here. Today's video is going to be sort of a top 5, but basically we're going to be talking about the top 5 least played champions. Now this is taken from the data that's on masteroverwatch.com, so it's not really a countdown list because that data is already out there and anyone can look at it themselves. So this video is just going to be a short video talking about why these are the least played champions, at least from what I can tell. So here's the list, the top 5 least played characters in order: Bastion, Winston, Zarya, Zenyatta, and Symmetra. With Symmetra being the least played character at 2.03%. So you can see here there's the character's win rates, the popularity, and their score per minute and kill death ratios. The score per minute really doesn't mean anything here, you can kind of ignore that. The popularity is mostly what we're going to be talking about here. But it's also interesting to note the win rate. You see that Symmetra actually has the highest win rate out of all these characters. Not only does she have the highest win rate out of all these characters, she also has the highest win rate out of any character in the game. She's the only character that broke over 60% win rate. Is that because her popularity is so low that her win rate is kind of skewed? I don't really think so. There's still millions of games played as Symmetra, and you can see with her kill death ratio, it is the highest of these characters, but it's definitely not the highest on the board in general. If you want to check out more of the stats, you can go to masteroverwatch.com and check them out yourself. But these are going to be the characters we're talking about for this video. So why these characters? Why are they the top 5, least played characters? The only thing they really have in common together is the fact that they're not offensive characters. No offensive characters low on this list. They're all really popular. But Bastion is also pretty fun to play on offense. And Zenyatta is the most offensive of the supports. Symmetra is definitely more of a defensive character, but if you're an offensive team trying to push and you can get one of her portals up, it definitely creates a really nice chance for you to take a point, being able to shorten the gap between your spawn and the point that you're trying to take. Now, some of these characters are on my most difficult to play list, and Symmetra, if I was to do an honorable mention, might have been on there as well. But then there's Bastion, and I don't think anyone is going to say that Bastion is hard to play. Now, you look at the list and you see that the bottom 2 characters are supports. There's just 2 tanks on there. So you definitely think, well, okay, those are the least played classes. But that's not actually true either. Mercy and Lucio are actually the 2 most played characters in the game. They're the only 2 characters that break 7%. Now, the tanks do tend to be the least played class, with Reinhardt being the only one in the top 10. It looks like Reinhardt is in 7th place, with all the rest of the tanks kind of falling down into the bottom 10. So tanks you definitely expect to be on here. No, it seems like a lot of people don't enjoy playing that tank role, and there have been a lot of teams where you play on where your team has the supports but you have no tanks. So that makes sense for Winston and Zarya. They're probably the 2 hardest of the tanks to play, both having relatively short-ranged weapons, kind of awkward play styles. Winston's really good at countering Symmetra though, so if Symmetra keeps having this crazy win rate, and maybe she starts picking up in popularity, you could also see Winston's rise in popularity as well as people counterpick to counter Symmetra. Now, something to note is the order these characters are ranked in does change if you switch to just PC rankings. This current ranking here includes consoles as well, so that's even more interesting for me because I would have figured on consoles characters like Winston and Symmetra would be easier to aim with using a controller compared to a mouse. And Bastion actually drops down into the 3rd least picked. That's even crazier to me, simply because he's so easy to use on PC. So you see Bastion, the easiest character who's literally a point and click character, drops down even further. But let's go over each character and why we feel they're actually ranked where they kind of are. I mean, Zarya and Winston, we already kind of discussed. They're tanks, that's not a very played role. They have kind of awkward play styles. They're a little difficult to play. They have short-ranged weapons, things like that. So, them being where they are makes sense. Let's talk about, Zenyatta. Zenyatta being where he is, he's there because, like I said before, I think he's just insanely difficult to play, this character. He has no mobility, he's focus fired as soon as you play him. His ultimate isn't like as game changing as, say, a Mercy ult or a Lucio ult, where you just prevent tons and tons of damage or resurrect damage that's been done. You have to know to click it to save allies. You can't just click it after the allies have been killed like Mercy can. So Zenyatta makes sense down here as well. The two that I'm really surprised to see would be Symmetra and Bastion. Bastion being the big surprise for me. You know, I feel like I see Bastions in a lot of games. So seeing that he's all the way down here on the list, he's in the sub 3% category. Only these 5 characters are in that category, by the way. Everyone else is above 3%, and not just like a little bit. Mei is the 6th least played character, and she's at 3.4%, which compared to Bastion at 2.8 is a pretty large gap. So like, why does Bastion make this list? Why is Bastion so not played? I feel like that's because there's kind of a stigma against Bastion. He's considered a low skill character that is kind of boring to play or boring to watch. You know, he basically sits in a spot and left clicks, and that's what he does. And that for a lot of people isn't very fun. For me, the only time I really enjoy playing Bastion is when I'm on offense with him, because it kind of creates a new dynamic. Instead of waiting for the enemy team to run into me, I'm actually trying to push forward with a not very mobile character who needs to find opportunities to set up. It's also pretty fun to set up the holy trifecta of Bastion, Reinhardt, Mercy on a payload, where you get the damage boost and the healing. It's actually double the healing from both the payload and the Mercy, and you've got your Reinhardt. That kind of counters a lot of the big counters to Bastion. Like snipers, he's usually really weak against, but with a Reinhardt shield, not so much. But really, I feel that he just makes it here because, you know, he's a defensive character that has to sit and wait. And for a lot of people, that's just not fun. So I can see why he makes it here. It just is surprising to me, because I feel like I see him a lot. And I play him a lot, too. But that's enough about Bastion. Let's talk about Symmetra, the least played character on the list. Symmetra kind of suffers from the same thing that Bastion does, in that she's a defensive character. Even though she's listed as a support, she can't really support an offensive team very well, because her form of support is getting people back to a spot, such as a point you're trying to hold, or building turrets to hold that point. You know, that's what her abilities are, and she doesn't really have the ability to push offensively because her turrets are so easily destroyed, and they take a while to set up because of the fact she can only hold 3 charges and things like that. This means that your opportunities to even pick Symmetra is a little less than half the games you're going to be playing. You're not really going to be picking her in the best of 3 control maps, simply because you need to take the objective first before you can even set up on it, and that's really difficult unless you're like a Symmetra main and you're just playing her because you enjoy playing Symmetra. Now, the really interesting part about Symmetra was, like I mentioned, the fact that she has the highest win rate out of any character in the game, not just on this list. The second place character is Torbjorn. Now, what that kind of tells me is that turrets are incredibly powerful. The 2 builder characters are the top 2 characters in the game, at least when it comes to win rate anyways. So what this kind of tells us is that people are having a hard time getting around turrets, and I think Torbjorn is just an easier turret character to play. So if you want to have turrets set up on your defense, you tend to pick the easier of the 2 characters, because his turret does more damage, has more range, isn't quite as trap-based. It's more just, here's the defensive line that you need to set up. And with there only being the 2 turret characters people pick in that first one, it makes sense to see Symmetra as low as she is on the list. Plus, she is kind of a difficult character to play with low hit points and short weapon range. So, I suppose that's why she makes the list where she does. Now, one final note for the video, basically just that the game's only been out for a few weeks now, and there hasn't been any real major tournaments. Whenever there's a big, huge tournament, not just one of the silly launch tournaments or something like that, but like a really big tournament, whenever you see one of those, players tend to copy what they see. So if one of these characters becomes really big on one of the teams that, wins the tournament, people are going to start playing them more because they're going to want to copy that. And then also, like I said, if maybe it's Symmetra, you'll see counters to Symmetra also rise. So the meta will definitely change over the next couple months. We'll have to keep an eye out on this, but that's going to be it for this video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to catch me out on Twitch, where we'll definitely be playing some of these characters a little bit more, just to see what's up with them. Have a great one, guys.